wanted to bring together technology to transform innovative thoughts into practical, affordable, and scalable solutions in K-12 education.
In 40 years of teaching, I've individualized learning, I've differentiated learning, and now we're personalizing learning. But finding that balance when choosing what technology to use with learners.
It's really all about culture. Culture eats strategy for lunch. If your culture is broken, you can't fix anything else.
That's where learning can happen when you have a passionate relationship with what is being learned. The concept of building safety without safety.
Your voices are heard and can make a difference. That culture is just important to build it where it's more collaborative. Each person's ideas are respected and they're valued.
The ideas that flow from participation have to be properly resourced, either financially or through sufficient human resources.
And so policy pops into my mind, and the impact that policy or the lack of policy around this area of personalized learning and what our thoughts are could really derail it quickly.
School culture that is not working, there's usually a lack of communication or not good communication or not healthy communication.
And if you take that choice away, just like how they learn differently, some of them can learn really good with videos, some of them got to read.
So when you think about this conversation we've had, the question posed right now is what is possible?
And how do you create those experiences that take them deeper into personalized learning?
But it seems like we have skipped something really important, and that is the why.
Well, first off, I'd like to welcome everyone to the first K12 Thought Leaders workshop meeting that we are hosting. It's our honor to be able to bring together this group of highly respected individuals with expertise in all sorts of backgrounds. And it's really exciting for us to get the opportunity for all of us to be able to collaborate together. Please remember to type a quick introduction of yourself in the chat if you haven't already done so. I'm also sure many of you are familiar with at least a few people attending today, but that would be good for other people that you have not met yet. I'll go over the agenda quickly for today. We'll give a brief introduction about why we formed the K12 Thought Leader group and some background information on that. And then we'll get into the subject for this workshop, which is centered around personalized learning. Blaine McCann will be talking about the definition of personalized learning, and then we'll also have Jim Warford to discuss the overview of the importance of culture related to personalized learning as well. Then we will be facilitating some breakout sessions with the World Cafe approach. We'll have 2 breakout sessions and a town hall meeting to regroup everybody together, and then we'll talk about recap and some possible next steps for future actions and meetings. So some background information on K12. Well, the K12 Thought Leaders was actually formed with like-minded people when we wanted to bring together technology to transform innovative thoughts into practical, affordable, and scalable solutions in K12 education. Our goal is to actually create and host these virtual workshops right now. Hopefully when things open up, we'll be able to host some in-person workshops too, with various different resources to explore these ideas and how we can actually turn them into reality. We want to bring together leaders such as yourself with various backgrounds that are passionate about turning these innovative thoughts, ideas into solutions for the students, parents, teachers, and educators in K-12. And that's why we call it K-12 Thought Leaders. Here are some key general topic areas based on some of the people that we've discussed to center around. This workshop will be on personalized learning, but we'll also be holding workshops about process automation and governance, big data, augmented decision making, district performance optimization, and continuous improvement. If you guys have any other ideas for other subjects or topics that you're interested in, please let us know. Suggest that to the group. You can email that to me. My email address is right over there. We do want to talk about other things, other subjects that are of interest that we could really collaborate on and make something happen on that.
My colleagues and I feel like personalized learning definitions, which we're going to talk a little bit about tonight, are best created within a local context and what it would mean to your community. In 40 years of teaching, I've individualized learning, I've differentiated learning, and now we're personalizing learning. And while I feel all three approaches are valid and they're certainly connected when we personalize learning for all of our students. I agree with Brian McClaskey that the difference between individualization and differentiation are what teachers are providing when teachers are providing the instruction, while personalized learning is when learners are driving their own learning. So there's a little bit of difference between what teachers are driving and what students are driving, becoming a little bit more student-centered. And while the definitions may vary based on the local context, my colleagues and I identified personalized learning elements that fit with most definitions and in most contexts. And we would say that at least two of these elements need to be visible in the classroom to call it personalized learning. So the following elements, I just want to kind of touch on them. Knowing your students is one of our elements. Intentionally building positive relationships with students is critical to student success. We all know that. And I would say all of these elements are not necessarily new thinking. They're just sort of pulled together. Knowing your students is taking time to identify, describe, nurture, and respond to their intellectual, social, and emotional characteristics. And Jim Warford will touch a little bit on this when he gets into the culture piece as well. Voice and choice is really the linchpin element. In fact, I would say it's difficult to build student agency and student efficacy without it. Voice is sharing our words, our ideas, and insights with others and with that authentic audience. Sort of like tonight with the World Cafe, we're going to be sharing all of our thinking. And choice is the opportunity to choose and then make an independent choice. So really it's both choices and choosing when we think about voice and choice. Flexibility, element 3, is the balancing of control and freedom of teachers and students. When to employ a gradual release of control to the student and when not to release it. And we talk about flexibility in spaces, flexibility in grouping, and also mindset. In other words, how does the learner view themselves as a learner? And do they feel that they have more of a growth mindset and we can eliminate the fixed mindset? Being data informed, teachers use data to implement personalized learning through what we would call a learner profile by understanding the needs of students, their strengths, their interests. And we're not data driven. We don't want to be driven by that data, but we want to use a variety of data types to inform student learning and classroom practices. Integrating digital tools is leveraging and using appropriate technology to facilitate learning for students. We already use technology, as we all know, but finding that balance when choosing what technology to use with learners. And we really want to, we use the SAMR model at my previous district and really want to have teachers redefine how they're doing teaching by the use of the technology. But it's really not letting the technology be the tail wagging the dog, if you will. So those are just a few of the things as we begin to think about what we might define personalized learning in our own context. And I want to turn it over to Jim Warford now to spend a little bit of time on school culture.
Thank you, Blaine. I'm Jim Warford. I'm very, very pleased to be invited to join this group today. I want to share with you quickly, next August will mark my 50th year in education. And so I'm not the brightest guy in this group, but I pay attention. So I've learned a few things along that way. I've worked at every level. For 35 years, I've been a huge believer in implementing and bringing technology into the classroom and to do exactly that, to help us personalize learning, to give students choice and voice. And for the last 20 years, I've been a senior advisor with Dr. Bill Daggett's International Center for Leadership and Education, and as a state leader, former chancellor of the Florida Public Schools, and a district leader, I've been able to ask myself this question, and I've been asking this question for a long, long time. Why is it when we implement anything, whether it's technology or a new platform, a new program, a new piece of curriculum, why do most of those implementations fail to reach the goals that we establish? What are the barriers? And so a number of years ago, I came to the conclusion that it's really all about culture. Culture eats strategy for lunch. Culture eats budget for lunch. And in the book, I say, if your culture is broken, you can't fix anything else. I want to repeat that. It sounds so simple, but if your culture, if your school culture, if your organizational culture, if your business culture is broken, you can't fix anything else, and you can't implement anything else. So I began to really focus the last 10 years and study. And this book is a result of a lot of the research I did about that. Building culture, building better relationships, the research into the declining social emotional skills of our young people today, and why that is so, and what we need to attend to. So what I want to say, and I really appreciate the opportunity to bring this perspective, this focus on social and emotional skills. And what I've learned, and I'll say it very quickly, we have to be as intentional about our culture and those social emotional skills as we are about anything else. We have to have a plan. We have to have a strategic thinking plan for implementing and improving. If you want your culture to improve, you have to plan for it, you have to budget for it, and you have to schedule for it. And so right now, my day job is as the program director for the Peter R. Marsh Foundation here in Washington State. And it's a very simple, direct thing that we do. We give away money and a very nice award to exceptional students across America, high school students who are demonstrating empathetic service learning to their communities. So I put my email, the Peter R. Foundation email in there, or you can use the email on the screen here. If you'd like some more information about that award, I got money burning a hole in my pocket that I'd love to give to some empathetic high school students to recognize and reward that kind of behavior. So thank you very much. My book has a lot more detail than you'll want to know about this, but I'm going to be listening and very glad to be part of this group.
I like the term personalized. The term personalized. I think of if you think of it a different way. If you say something to someone and they take it personally, it means it resonates with them at their core, right? It impacts them and they have a gut reaction to it. Now that could be negative, that could be positive, but it doesn't. It's something that can't just be brushed aside. It's something that hits to the core, right, of them. And so tying that into personalized learning, I like the image that learning, we would take learning personally, that what is happening in our classroom would strike such a chord in the individuals that it would elicit from them a strong reaction, because I think that's where learning can happen, when you have a passionate relationship with what is being learned.
That's awesome. The minute you said that and looking at that word personal, that really strikes me. That's great. Other thoughts, other words, or even images that come to mind?
I really like that analogy too, what you just said there. And I think some of the elements that Dr. McCann talked about with the knowing your learner, having that relationship, in order to get the student to have that kind of agency, the relationship really is an important piece as well, in order for them to feel comfortable getting that passionate about something. I can speak to that a little bit. I was connecting with this a little bit just in the last few days. So I'm a gifted educator, and we in Westside, we identify students for strengths in math and reading. So I have enrichment reading groups, and there's a little boy who's a fifth grader, and he was uncomfortable with the novel that we were reading, and I didn't know why, and he wouldn't tell me why. And his mother emailed and said that he was uncomfortable with it, and he wanted to switch. And so he did advocate for himself, and that he came up to me and he said, I'm not enjoying this novel. I don't really like it. And so I gave him the choice of an independent reading project and finding something else to do. And so he did that and was able to advocate for himself, and again have that agency and that comfortability with me to say, I don't like this. And it turned out it was rooted in deeper things. There were some things in the novel that tied back to his own history, which he psychologically couldn't handle. So it was super important that he talked to me about it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's very powerful.
it really was.
Well, I think one thing for me that it actually applies to both questions a little bit, because I often think about my time as a teacher. I've been administrator for a while now, but I began my career in New York City as a teacher, and I often remember reading an educator. His name was Lee Higgins, and he talked about the concept of building safety without safety. And that was his kind of term, safety without safety. And the basic idea being, in a classroom or in a school, ideally you want kids and you want teachers working within their kind of zone of proximal development that we all learned about with Vygotsky, right? But you want to create a culture that's safe, where kids and teachers feel that they can take risks, but not so safe that they feel that they can lay back and they won't be challenged each and every day. So walking that fine line of safety without safety, I think, plays into that personalized learning, but I think it also plays into the larger gestalt of the culture that you want to form, not just in a classroom, but in a school as a whole.
And on that note, I think it's super important that people have a growth mindset about it too, and aren't fixed. And yeah, they have to be open to new ideas and open to thinking outside the box a little bit.
It was interesting how you said that, Katie, in that example with the fifth grader too, in that you had something else to give him, right? Like you were prepared, either innately or just, you sprung into action and figured that out, right? And how did kind of the standards or the expectations for what you were trying to teach in that moment, how did that play in, and how did that aspect of culture, do you think, weigh on you?
I mean, I knew that he needed something different, and that he was advocating for himself in that, and that I do happen to have a library, rather extensive library. This is my 24th year. So I've got a lot to choose from. So he definitely had a lot of choice there. And then, I had to think about, my other students we were reading The Lightning Thief. And so it was, we were pulling in some Greek mythology and things like that. And so I was trying to think, so I actually had ready some slides on Greek mythology that he was able to do rather than read the novel. But then the novel that he chose, I had him journal some of his thoughts and just thinking, because it's not like I had a unit ready to go to hand him. So I just said, okay, as you're reading, journal every few pages and give me some thoughts and ideas, and then we'll sit and talk about them. So
that's awesome. So clearly you didn't feel there was a pressure of a culture of accountability. You felt enabled to do that.
Very much so. That's in our role, our EY gifted role. We are not adhering to the contents and the standards and indicators so much. That's more the roles of the classroom teachers. Our job is to take those and extend and enrich.
We work right now in our school and we've worked with Blaine. He was our interim superintendent last year, of really shifting gears and creating more of a collaborative culture within the teachers. So really modeling that last year, so that your voices are heard and can make a difference. You might not always get what you want, but at least you've been able to give your viewpoint to the group. And so that so it's just kind of like that culture is just important to build it where it's more collaborative. I don't know, that each person's ideas are respected and they're valued, and they're kind of like they're stewards of their own learning, but they know that, and we've created that type of culture.
That's great, Billy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to emphasize the word respect as well. I think it has to be centered in respect. That has to be the core, I think. I think it's tied to authenticity, the feeling of safety in terms of sharing, and collaboration, transparent communication. All those things I think are founded in the basis of respect for one another. And it is something that really needs to be tackled, because it's really just the personality of the organization. And so just like an individual's personality we can't plug in a new personality on Monday morning. Culture is the same way. So I don't think that we can move forward until we kind of take care of building an innovative, supportive, respectful culture. So.
But that culture, you need to make sure you have trust. That's the big thing that we've learned with creating that collaborative culture, is that trust. And also by having that trust, you're more vulnerable, right? To be able to feel like you can share what you want to share.
Yeah, you have to feel safe.
Yeah. You have to feel safe.
I'm going to put on my CBO hat here for a second, because I think you're going to have more accepting evolution of culture if you do have the trust and respect and things we've talked about. But it also has to be resourced. The ideas that flow from participation have to be properly resourced, either financially or through sufficient human resources. Because if you have a culture where great ideas are stifled because they can't be funded, for example, then that just kind of limits your creativity that is needed for these kinds of, I guess, organic evolutions in terms of our thought process and thinking. So
that's a great
before
point.
we get started, we have to be committed to committing the proper resources, no matter what that is. Time, money.
I'm a school board member, and so policy pops into my mind, right? And the impact that policy or the lack of policy around this area of personalized learning and what our thoughts are could really derail us quickly.
Right. Even following policy, like, I mean, it's one thing to have, policy, but it's another thing to have everyone buy into it and follow said policy. I mean, I see it all the time where we have policies done and, they're circumvented. And, once that circumvention is enabled, then everyone's going to circumvent it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got a Word document, you can capture in your ideas, like you said, and we could go on. So let me get the first question up there is, how might you define personalized learning in your context? Josh, do you want to take a shot at that, or Jim Wolford?
Yeah, I mean, I can take a shot at it.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So Josh Malpe here. So I'm the director of technology at a school district up in Minocqua. So, I find it interesting listening to you educators talk. So to me, personalized learning from a technology standpoint is providing the necessary tools for, kind of the description of what you guys talked about as far as, giving choice. I think technology is a vessel, and, using it appropriately within a school, creates a personalized learning environment.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Jim, you want to provide us some thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what Josh just said. And there are lots of aspects and moving pieces, parts of that. But for me, it's giving each learner an individual place and pace and path toward a common objective, or maybe not even necessarily a common objective, but the objective itself can be individualized. So there's ways to go about that. The big thing to me is that we've been talking about this for a while, but we are rapidly witnessing the forced transition, the transformation of schools all across the country, and we're moving this way, and it's going to happen. So the people who've been thinking about it and practicing longer are going to get better at it faster.
And to me, on the personalized learning, it was more about mastering than it was about what grade level you were at. And
Yes.
So we were trying to work on, here are just what you got to learn, and you learn at your own speed, and until you can show mastery of that particular subject. That first year was kind of interesting. We had a handful of kids that in their favorite subject, they went through the entire year curriculum by Christmas. So they had the rest of the school year to work on their subjects that they didn't like as much. And so it was really interesting that first year, and it was eye-opening for the instructional people. They were shocked how well that was working out there.
Personalized learning in my context, I think that, we special educators just kind of think that we know a little something about that, right?
Yes.
When learning can be based on individualization of students and their needs and deficits and things of that nature. But I also spent 12 years in the Houston Independent School District, and we had a huge personalized learning initiative. Sadly, it lasted, it went away after our superintendent went away. And so that was unfortunate, right? But the teachers had really bought into it at a number of the schools. And you could still see that work happening in terms of personalizing with student choice, really having a definition for what this personalization and rigor, how those two things can work together, coincide together. And so, yeah, that's the context that I define personalized learning as in my work and in my experiences.
Yeah, that's a very good correlation with special education students. I mean, you have to tailor almost everything you do to what they actually need that day, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so that level of experience can bring a whole lot to the table, without doubt.
School culture is, so I work with schools. I don't directly work in a school anymore, but it's the whole picture, right? It's I know relationships we talked about, but for me, it really comes down to when I see school culture that is not working, there's usually a lack of communication, or not good communication, or not healthy communication. And so, and we see that, I see that a lot. We as consultants and as a company, sometimes we feel like we're walking into a district and teaching them how to communicate more than we are implementing our project and program. So
How do you think that impacts their innovation? Does it derail it?
Well, it's hard because, we've seen situations where district office doesn't know what's going on in a building, and the building doesn't know what's going on in the district office. And so innovation is happening, but if you're not talking, you don't know about it, and you're always just kind of fighting against each other, right? Yeah. And so I think one of the nice things about personalized learning is it does kind of force, or it provides a really good context for communication, and innovation is kind of built into that.
Mike said that when somebody new comes in, they want to bring their old culture with them a lot, right? And that's really tough to do. I know from a technology standpoint, being the CTO, everything I did at a previous school may not apply at my new school. And so you really got to just wait it a little while, see what they do, how they're doing things, fix the low hanging fruit that's broke, right? But the rest of that culture, like you say, is going to have to take some time and effort. I know when we started personalized learning at Pasadena ISD, we only had like a handful of teachers that wanted to do it. Out of 4,000 teachers we had, only a handful that saw the benefits of personalized learning. So we start out with 4 or 5 classrooms of kids, and right now they're up to 14,000 of their kids, but they got 50 some thousand, so they got a ways to go. But they've got entire campuses now that are strictly personalized learning campuses.
There was kind of a 2-year study of personalized learning, and at the end, the district put up $250,000 to basically fund grants for people to try personalized learning. And that was the first year. There were places where we cut holes in walls and teachers co-taught, and there's no desks. It was kind of all over the place. The second year, they increased that to almost $650,000 of funding. And now you can't walk through Elmbrook without, especially at the elementary and middle school level, and see a desk. Which is really cool. But then, you have my daughter who is just like, but I want a desk. And so, it's like her last year classroom was trying to be that personalized. There were no desks. And she's like, but I really need that. That's how I learn. Yes. And we had to kind of fight with them to say, okay, I realize what you're trying to do here, but you got a kid who wants it, right? And so don't go too far. So, yeah.
Yeah,
what's personalized to her is a desk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you take that choice away, just like how they learn differently, some of them can learn really good with videos. Some of them got to read, and some of them do both. I know my 17-year-old daughter, she listens to the pod while she's reading, and she can listen to it like at 1.5 speed and read long, and that's how she learns, right? Mm-hmm. And so each one of them, when you take their desk away, that's part of their learning. And so you really got to make sure your culture understands that, and don't create them boxes again, right? You're creating a personalized, painting here. And so you got to leave it continue to flow and a new batch of kids comes in, right? And, some new child from a different school comes in, and they've been doing just a little bit different over at the other school. And so,
now, as a part of what we've come to learn in the World Cafe approach, it's important to try to take some of the thoughts and some of the ideas that you were sharing with each other and some of the learnings that you've done, and come together collectively to see what it is that we heard and what we're thinking. And so, this concept of personalized learning and culture that supports that personalized learning is what we have talked about here tonight. And I heard a lot of great conversation and a lot of great images that came to mind. And so when you think about this, and I could hear the passion come through in a lot of the conversations that we were having about how important this is and how critical it is, especially now. So when you think about this conversation we've had, the question posed right now is, what is possible here? What is possible for us to do when you think about a digital ecosystem, or you think about a place in which we bring this to life and can breathe life into it? What's possible here? And to that extent, who cares? Who needs this? Who sees the need in it? So what's possible? What should we be thinking or doing, and how should we go about it?
To me, it seems like there's a lot of tools available, a lot of online materials available. And seems like the problem that we talked about, well, the number one problem that I think in the breakout sessions that we have seen is really the cultural change and the status quo, challenging the status quo situation. And I think the technology is there, and actually the material, a lot of different materials out there. Different tools, if combined together, definitely can do a lot. And one of the problem I've been thinking about this is really the scarce resource of the teachers. So if we physically have to have somebody in the classroom, and just like Ken was talking about, and actually Blake did it, break out the rooms and build a building for that kind of things, it's very, very costly. Maybe the tryout can happen digitally. I mean, but there are cultural things has to be addressed, and there are systems, existing systems in different states may be challenged. Well, that's my opinion right now.
Well, I think when you talk about that, I also, it prompts me to think a little bit about equity as well. And I think when you personalize learning and you really look at each child's needs, I think especially kids in poverty, if you teach them how to learn and how they can drive their own learning, my goodness, that's something that, we've never really, tried to, that's where you really challenge the system when it comes, certain gifted kids get to have certain things. Kelly talked a little bit about special ed, but how do we combine all of those things that we know about special education, gifted education, and really give it to every child and let them personalize their learning and take it to where they can take it? Because that's something you can never take away from somebody. If you know how to learn and you can drive your own learning, nobody can take that away from you. And you really can go anywhere with it. So from my point of view, that's what's possible. We can truly get to every child being able to do the things that they want to do in life, find that pathway.
I thought and I'm going to kind of reiterate something Josh said in our session, and it was really important because he talked about a really big word, circumvention, and it came in line with policies. And so it's this what enable, what's possible. Well, we think about what's possible, but what also enables that possibility or can hinder it. Mm. And so Josh, I don't know if you want to speak more about that, but that word circumvention was a big deal. That I circled that twice because I think it does talk about that hindrance of innovation.
There has to be a structure that if you're going to talk about it, using it with poverty, I'll use my own granddaughter. So we had the very wonderful opportunity to go to Europe, and I got to go with one granddaughter, and the other granddaughter was performing in some band thing with really great skills that she learned at Westside, by the way. And so when we got back, I was astounded by how much the younger granddaughter, Harper, was learning about all kinds of things, because she wanted to know about art and artists and color palettes and all kinds of things. And she was online constantly watching YouTubes and looking at things. But if you personalize learning for someone, I'm sitting right now at 48th and Ames, for those of you who know Omaha, a lot of the students here barely have the technology. They're not going to, how do you create those experiences that take them deeper into personalized learning? So I think that the structure that says, here's the introduction to some possibilities with your personalized learning are essential, especially for our low-income students. And I think that's part of the challenge of the first step, is how do you create a system of personalized learning that also gives common experiences or extended experiences, or even an insight into a world that you might want to learn about, or a way that you might want to learn for children who don't have that.
Yeah. Well, the first step is technology, right?
Well, and I think also with that, with they don't have anything, the big piece is, like I'm taking away, is the social emotional piece for kids. because now they have a strength. They're going to start developing this strength as they move through by having their own goal setting, by having their own self-reflection. If they have something or if they don't, at least we're giving them some tools to be able to work on whatever it is on their personalized learning. And they've learned a lot of the pieces within personalized learning along the way. So maybe we can almost break that cycle of here you are in your classroom and okay, Johnny, you're this person, you're not doing so well, you're in this group and you're in this group. No, I'm in my group. I'm in control of my learning and I can make the world however I want to by whatever I want to put into it and whatever I want to get out of it.
And Pasadena ISD here in the Houston area, we started about 6-7 years ago with that Race the Top Bill Gates grant. And that got us started on that. It was very slow, not just a handful of teachers to start with. Now they're up to 14,000 plus kids, but they've got 50,000, so they got a ways to go. But it's getting built into their culture, into our campuses. Now, what happens, like we talked about in one of our groups, is when somebody new comes in, does that all fall apart, right? So somehow it's got to be ingrained in the whole school district's culture. And that kind of really starts at the board, right? So the board has to be, at that level with accepting that and making sure that when they get a new principal, they get a new superintendent, that they just don't, dissolve everything that's been done for 5, 6, 7 years, right?
Yes.
And so that's the key there that we found out, is that we had to get very, very top level support. And we even went to TEA in the state to try and get their support to make changes for seat time, grade levels. I think somebody mentioned about, instead of grade levels, we just trying to create mastery. And we had kids that take their favorite course and finish everything, a full year of curriculum by Christmas time. And then they take their other courses and finish them the rest of the year. And so there's a whole lot there that can happen, that your standard learning process just, gets blowed up. And a lot of people just have a hard time doing that. But COVID blew everybody up.
That's right.
And and technology is everywhere now. It's really at that place where I was dreaming about 8 years ago that we needed to be. And so it's taken all this long time in a pandemic to make it happen. I really would hate to see districts fall back into the old culture, but there was a lot of good stuff there too that we gotta bring forward. And like somebody said, we're in the third step of 21st century. And that was one of my points is 8 years ago, how far into the 21st century do we got to get before we're in the 21st century? Right.
Right.
And so as a tech guy, I wasn't very liked around there by the instruction people because I was messing up their sandbox.
Sure.
But now there's teachers over there, they say they will never go back to standard teaching. Right. And they've got kids that hate it if they go to another campus and that campus isn't doing personalized learning. On the other hand, the high school kids, they had a hard time picking up personalized learning. So we kind of accept the idea that they were already broke by the system, right? So there wasn't going to be any changing too many of those high school kids into personalized learning in their last 1, 2, 3 years of school. So we focused back down in the middle school and lower grades after that and had a whole lot more success.
That's awesome, Steve. Thank you for sharing that.
I just had a thought. I've been thinking, listening to everyone, and it's been a really, really helpful conversation. It seems like and maybe this is just the group, but it seems like we have skipped something really important, and that is the why.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like we've done a lot of talking about the what. And I would imagine that there are about 22 different whys in this call right now. And there are about 96,000 different whys. There's about 96,000, 52 million K-12 students in the country. There's, 52 million whys, right? And so I wonder if it would be helpful for this group not to just define what is personalized learning, but why. What is the why behind it? What do we believe about education and about people that would lead us to believe that personalized learning and this approach is a great investment and a great thing to do and the right work to be doing?